Hey everybody, sorry we didn't get through these notes yesterday in class, but we're going to go through the end of the 7.1 notes that we left off. So please get those out. If you need to pause the video, please go ahead and do that. So you're going to need your copy of the 7.1 notes and something to write with. Okay, so now that we have everything we need, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to isolate, meaning get alone, the part involving x, and then we're going to take the nth root of each side. So for example, in A, that means I'm going to divide by 2 because I need this x to the fourth all alone. So if I have x to the fourth is equal to 81, now I'm ready to get rid of that fourth power. And so what I'm really trying to do here is raise this to the 1/4 power, because when I multiply, remember exponent to an exponent means we multiply, they're touching right here. And so that would make it 1, which means I just have x, or x to the 1, and then I need to do 81 to the fourth, which is also the same thing as a fourth root of 81. So if I break down 81, we know it breaks down into 9 and 9. Breaking down each 9 into 3 and 3 shows me that I have a group of 4 3's here. So the fourth root of 81 is 3. Now let's think back to what we have done earlier. Because 4 is an even number, okay, so because 4, this 4 here, is even, I'm taking an even root, I need to put the plus or minus. So my final answer to problem A is that x is equal to plus or minus 3. Okay, so we're going to try this again in B. As I look at what needs to be isolated, I don't actually need to isolate anything because there's nothing multiplying or adding outside of this parentheses involving x. So since I don't need to isolate, I'm ready to take the nth root, which means if I have the 3, I'm going to go ahead and take the 1/3 exponent. So because I'm going to take the 1/3 exponent, I'm going to have just x minus 2 here. And I need to find 10 to the 1/3, which could be rewritten as the cube root of 10. Now 10 only breaks down into 2 and 5. Neither of them are going to break down any further. I can't actually simplify the cube root of 10, so I'm going to leave it as the cube root of 10. The only way I can solve this is by moving over the 2. So x is going to equal 2 plus 3 root 10. Okay, so the reason why this one is a plus and not a plus or minus is that when we look at the denominator of the fraction, the denominator is 3. The degree of the root is 3. 3 is an odd number, which means we only get one answer. The root we're taking is positive, so that's why I left the plus, and that's why I have just the plus here. Okay, let's try another one. In C, I also don't need to isolate. I'm just going to go ahead and leave that alone. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 1/5. So I'm going to take the 1/5 root. So x is going to equal 243 to the 1/5 power. So with this 243 to the 1/5 power, that's the same thing as the fifth root of 243. Because this is an odd root of a positive or negative number, I'm only going to get one answer and only one answer. So what I need to do is I need to break down 243, which I know this is going to be 3 times 81 because 3 times 8 is 24, 3 times 1 is 3. So as I break this down, I know 81 breaks down into 9 and 9, which then breaks down into 3 and 3, and 3 and 3. So I can see that I have a group of 5 3's, which this number in the check mark tells me my group size. So x is going to be only positive 3, not plus or minus, because we're dealing with an odd root. Okay, so we're going to keep working with this whole idea of isolating. So we're going to go ahead and isolate the part with the exponent, which means if I want x to the third alone, I need to divide by 6. So negative 1,296 divided by 6. 6 goes into 12 2 times. 6 goes into 9 1 time, with 3 leftovers because 9 minus 6 is 3. 6 goes into 36 2 times. So that means I have x cubed is equal to negative 212. What I'm going to do from there, now that it's isolated, is I'm going to take the cube root. You can write it as the cube root, or you could write it as the 1/3 power. Either way is fine. which means I need to break this down. Because this is an even number, I know 2 is going to go in, so 2 goes into 20 10 times with 1 left over. 2 goes into 12 6 times. I know that I can break that down into 2 and 53. And then I know that, well, there's not really much I can do with 53. 53 doesn't break down. 2 doesn't work, 3 doesn't work, 4 doesn't work, 5. So it most likely is a prime number, which means that x would be equal to the cube root of negative 212. And because it doesn't break down, because I don't have a full group of 3, I'm just going to leave it like that. In E, isolating means I'm going to move my 10 over, which means I have x to the 6th is equal to negative 10. When I go ahead and take a 6th root, or a 1/6 power, whichever way you prefer to look at this, if I take this to the 1/6 power, that's not going to work very well, because when I have x is the 6th root of negative 10, remember that when we're taking an even root, if it has a negative, we're going to get no solution. It's no real solution. We could try to get some i's and all that kind of stuff in there, but for the purpose of what we're trying to get through for this class, it's fine. Okay, the last example on your note page, we're going to take everything to the 1/4 power. So we're going to take everything to the 1/4 power, which means I have x minus 4 is equal to 81 to the 1/4. And if we think back to what we did in example A, we know that 81 to the 1/4 power means that we have plus or minus 3. And the reason why I have plus or minus is because the denominator here is even. So when I move my 4 over, we know that x is going to be 4 plus or minus 3. So let's go ahead and actually figure it out. 4 plus 3 is 7. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, so as you can see, we finished the notes. What I've done is I've collected some of the problems off the back of the 7.1 sheet that you should be working on today with the sub. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at how could we solve some of these problems. And I just picked a few at random. So one thing I notice about this exponent right here is that it's negative. And I know that I can break a negative exponent into a positive exponent, then raised to the negative exponent. And the reason why I'm going to do this is it can be helpful to get rid of the negative, so that way when I'm dealing with fractional exponents, I'm only dealing with one complicated thing at a time. So to undo this negative exponent, I'm going to raise both sides to the negative 1. And so if I raise both sides to the negative 1, these would cancel out. I would get n plus 25 to the 3/2 power, and a fraction raised to a negative gives me my whole number. To get rid of a fractional exponent, I'm going to raise all of this to the reciprocal, which means I'm going to do the 2/3 power. So I'm going to go ahead and raise that to the 2/3 power. So I need to think through what 729 to the 2/3 power can be. So first I'm going to rewrite that as the cube root of 729, and then I'm going to square it. So let's think through what the cube root of 729 is. I can tell that 9 goes in because 9 goes into 72 8 times, and 9 goes into 9 1 time. And then I can break down 81 into 9 and 9, which means I have a group of 3 9s. And this 3 here means I need a group of 3. So the cube root of 729 is 9, and when I square it, I get 81. So right now I have n plus 25 is equal to 81. And the thing that's going to determine whether or not I need a plus or minus has to do with this number, the denominator, when I take the reciprocal of it. So this number here, this number that turned into my root, is odd. I don't need a plus or minus. I only need the plus because I'm taking the cube root of a positive. So to solve for it, I'm going to move my 25, and 81 minus 25, borrowing here, 6, 5, n would be 56. Let's do another example together real quick. So if we look at this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my 5, which means I have 27v to the 4/3 is equal to 81. When I take the reciprocal of my exponent, my reciprocal becomes 3/4. So this part undoes each other and I'm left with 27v is equal to, and now I need to think through, well, how am I going to do this? So I know I can do 81 to the 1/4 and then cube it. So the 4th root of 81, and then I'm going to cube it. The 4th root of 81 is 3, and then when I cube it, I'd get 27. When I put 27 here, I need to ask myself, do I need a plus or minus? The number here on the bottom is even, the number in my radical is even, so because that's even, I'm going to put my plus or minus. To solve for v, I'm going to go ahead and divide by the 27 out front here. And so plus or minus 27 divided by 27, positive 27 over 7 is 1, negative 27 over 27 is negative 1, so my answer is plus or minus 1. One last example, let's go ahead and take a look at it. The first thing we're going to do to get rid of that fractional exponent is I'm going to raise it to the reciprocal. And the reason I'm going to do that right away is I have nothing outside of the parentheses to move. So 9 squared is 81, which would equal negative 4 minus 17n. I'm going to go ahead and move my 4, which would give me 85 is equal to negative 17n. And when I divide by negative 17, n would be negative 5.